My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you be cool people.
All right, welcome back to another episode. Eli here, and we're here with Me Cool People. Today's guest, I have this wonderful gentleman I have had the opportunity to meet, and it's kind of cool. We met, I actually looked it up. We met January of 2023 at a coffee shop, and since then we've got to know each other. He is here in the local DFW area. Super cool dude. This is Chad King, and he is the vice president of Ayoka Systems, a local software development firm that does custom software solutions and customized platforms for mid and enterprise level organizations. And on a personal note, he is a whiskey connoisseur. He loves great barbecue, and he is an all-around just great guy. So, Chad, welcome to the show today.
Eli, thanks, man. Really cool to be here.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Tell everybody a bit more about who you are and how you help your clients.
Okay, sure. So Chad King, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a Marine. I love barbecue and whiskey, and we do software. I don't code. I got guys way smarter than me that write the code, right? But as a business, we help companies that can't quite get what they need on the market. So we customize software solutions. For 20 years, we've been building from the ground up. And recently we've got a platform where I can customize something for somebody, get 95% of what custom would be. But the cool thing is I can now rent that solution to them. And so instead of a large upfront check, it becomes an affordable monthly payment. So it's been fun. We're solving inventory management problems, scheduling problems, billing problems. I kind of boiled it down to this. We can help our clients get the right people in the right place at the right time to do work, and make sure they have the tools and materials that they need to do it.
That is awesome. And how did you get started in this? I mean, first off, how long have you been doing this? And kind of tell us a little bit about the journey of how you got into this company.
Yeah, so I've been with Ayoka for a little over 10 years. And I've known even in the company longer than that. We partnered together on a couple of deals before. I was running sales for an IT company, and we had partnered on a couple of things, and ended up being time for me to make a move. The CEO here is a fellow Marine. We never served together, but that is how we met afterward. And man, the stars just aligned, and I came over, and it's been good for me. And I think I can objectively say it's been good for the company. So it's been a lot of fun, and that's how I came to be here.
That is very cool. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your, what kind of problems are you solving with clients? Like when they come to you, they're like, okay, here's what's going on. Where do you come in, and what does that journey kind of look like? So people can kind of get an understand of how your business helps solve the problem for them.
Cool. So we do a number of things. Like we've helped some people that they've got very old software to the point that they need to update a server and they can't because their software is limited to what they can do. And so we can actually revamp, rewrite, even recreate that. But we help, it's a little different for everybody, but the clients we help the best are when things are kind of in chaos. And what I mean by that is business is so good. They're just blowing and going that money is practically falling off the table, right? And they know they're not capturing everything. It could be something with scheduling problems. These are real world examples, by the way. Hey, we had 2 crews at one job and no crew at another job. Or we showed up to do work and the materials that we thought were there are not there. So our crew can't do the work that they're supposed to do. Here's a big pain point. We are not billing for all the change order work that we're doing. So these customers, they're going out, they're doing a job. Something needs to kind of go beyond the scope. They're authorized to do it. They do the work and maybe even use materials, incur additional expenses. And it doesn't make it all the way through to that invoice piece, right? Which is where you get that money back. And so these are real world examples. These are pain points that these clients are dealing with. And it's not bad business. I've had some people go, oh my God, I can't believe it. That's terrible. But no, it's because business is so good that it's just, we help them kind of corral the chaos, put some guardrails up. That's a huge one, is to make sure you're getting paid for all the work that you're doing, right?
No, definitely. And one of the things, I mean, I like you just said, corral the chaos, because that's one of the things that, as businesses, and it doesn't matter what level, where somebody has a small business that's even a solopreneur with one or two employees, as they start to scale all the way up to, enterprise level manufacturing companies, things like that. As you scroll or as you scale, you become more chaotic. There's more opportunity for things to slip through the cracks. So I love that you're taking care of that piece. Now, with that said, you've got like, what are some of the best bigger clients that you've worked with? Like, what's some of the things that the industries? Tell us a little bit more about those kind of clients and the ones that you're working with right now.
Okay. So I've got some big enterprise level clients. I've got a global shipping company based out of Houston. I've got a global agriculture company based out of Melbourne, Australia. I mean, these are large global enterprise clients. We are solving some big problems for them, and we're solving some small problems for them, but we're solving them thousands or millions of times a year, which adds up, right? And those clients are great. We love those clients. They kind of eventually pay bigger bills, right? It's great. And we can move the needle on a pretty large scale. But I tell you, the people we really love working with are a little more local, kind of mid-size. We've got some, what I like to call generational businesses. So we've got some clients that they have grown up in their business. It's a second, third generation owner, and they've kind of grown up. They've got some ideas they had ideas on how it could be better. And now they're finally in charge. They're running things. They get to implement their ideas. And it's really cool for us to get to be a part of that. Because if someone has a solid process and they're just limited by being kind of manual, and we can automate that, we can absolutely drive a business further. And what we do is we take a look at that and say, okay, is this a process you should automate? Because you don't want to automate a bad process. Why would you want to do the wrong thing faster? So once somebody has something that it's inhibiting the growth of their business and we can help unlock that, that's one of my favorite things to be a part of.
No, that is great. And I love that. Why would you want to automate something that's not working? The reality is that, and that leads me to my next question. And this is where we're going to kind of get into some nuts and bolts kind of stuff is if somebody, there's a lot of people out there that are doing custom software of all kinds of levels, everything from an app for your coaching business all the way up to major manufacturing, stuff like that.
Yep.
But if somebody is looking at having a app developed or some custom software and they think that's the next thing they do, what are some of the pitfalls that they need to think about? And think about this from a standpoint of, say, a smaller business that they don't know what they don't know.
I love this question.
Okay, man, good. That's what I'm looking for.
Because I do have some thoughts on that. Like, to me, the first thing you want to do is make sure you can't go buy what you need off the shelf. And that may seem counterintuitive, right? For a guy that only gets paid if we build something custom, but we're not here to build what exists, right? If there's a really good solution out there that you can go buy or subscribe to, and it's 90% of what you need, you should do that. And so one of the first things we do at Discovery is like, hey, what have you already done to try to solve this? What other packages have you looked at? Some areas we're very familiar with what's out there. And so I'll say, hey, what about X? What about Y? And if somebody's got a good answer for why those things won't work for them, then boom, we're off to the races. We're getting into requirements gathering and discovering and figuring out what they need and why those aren't a fit. It's fairly common for somebody to go, oh, wait, I'm not familiar with that one. And so then my next step is go look at that and see if that won't work for you. And if it won't, come back and we'll keep talking. So you want to make sure that you're not building something unnecessarily, right? And then the next thing is you want to understand what you need. And what I mean is you don't need to know how to build the software. If you did, you wouldn't need us, right? But I tell somebody, I don't need you to necessarily know the solution, but I want you to have a very deep understanding of the problem. What are we trying to do here? We'll help with the solution. We'll figure out. We'll get you to the promised land, a better place than where you are today. But we really need to understand what you're trying to do and why.
Great. That is, and I love the way you describe that for a couple of different reasons. Coming from, as you're describing the process, number one, is there something that exists? Because I know people, like I come from the CRM world, so I help people with their campaigns for their follow-up processes. And I know people that are just like, nothing else will work. I have to have this custom built. And I'm like, no, you don't. And you're going to spend $20,000 to $50,000 to build something when you don't have the budget to do that.
Right.
And you could spend $100 a month and get the software that's capable of it. But then you brought in the next piece, which is, having a clear plan of what is it you actually needed to do. And so many people don't think through that process. And that's where, like, for me, that's always so frustrating. I have people that, like, again, going back to the lower level on a, hey, I just want to set up a calendar for my follow-up process, somebody to book on my calendar. I'm like, okay, it's not as simple as set up a calendar. It's a what's the follow-up process?
There's workflow.
What happens next? There's workflows. Yeah. What happens in the bigger picture? So it's not just a pop, it shows up on Google, right? It's like, you have to think through that process. And there might be 20 steps, but you have to think through the steps. Those steps may be easy. They may take, 5 minutes to do all of them, but you have to think through the process. And so many people don't do that. And so that's something that I always find, that's a great conversation for people to understand how important that really is.
I love that you brought up CRM, right? And here's why, is because we build CRM functionality every day. Like we've got so many projects that have that. But somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want you to build me a CRM. I'm like, whoa, time out. No, there are 1,000 CRMs and there are several dozen good ones, that what do you need that won't do? And so when I say we build CRMs, that's when we need to build that functionality as a part of something else. There needs to be a higher purpose. There needs to be a bigger thing that we're solving. And by the way, you need some CRM functionality in there. And it doesn't make sense necessarily. It can be relatively simple functionality. We don't need to go integrate something else. Sometimes it's easier just to build that in and have one system, one login, right? And so we'll do that. We build that stuff all the time, but I have never yet built someone a dedicated CRM because I don't see the need.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. And I love the, you can look at that. And that's something too. When somebody's coming to you, do you look at what do you have now and how can we enhance that versus completely migrating over? Because I think that's something that people need to be aware of too, is that those are two different options.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can we implement, keep portions or all of what you have now and make some changes? Even one of my largest clients right now that we're doing some really good things for, and these are some of the use cases that I mentioned earlier, right? They came to us using 4 different software packages to run their business. And 3 of those were replacing. 1 of them we're keeping because it's pretty complex and it's very good at what it does. And they were relatively easy to integrate with. And so we said, hey, it doesn't make sense to recreate this one. Let's keep that. Let's integrate with it. So their workflow is easier. It's a click of a button instead of a bunch of reentry and stuff for them now. But one of those packages we advise not getting rid of and recreating in this one. It feels pretty seamless for them. That's the important thing. If it doesn't have the good integration, that's probably going to reduce or eliminate the possibility of that. But if we can make it fit within what we're doing, we're not going to necessarily replace everything you have.
Yeah. And that's something to always keep in mind too. And a lot of people, especially so I come from the business side of the smaller entrepreneur, like again, solopreneurs, they usually have 1 to 5 VAs that are working with them. And they're the worst at bouncing from software to software to software. Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's like, no, stop. Don't buy any more crap. You don't need it. And it's a conversation we have to have. And I like that you just said, you're going to go through, you can look at the whole stack, all the different things. And it might be important to have all of those pieces, but if you can bring the majority of them into one, that's great. But if there's something, it's working and it's working great and you don't want to mess that up, figure out how to integrate with it as opposed to replacing it.
We might build around that, right? We might say, okay, this is the key piece. This is working. There are things around this that aren't working. Let's fix that. But let's build around this key piece that is functioning well for you and serving you.
Nice. I love that. And that is very cool. So as we're going through this, your clientele tend to be a lot bigger corporations. Do you have some that have started in a smaller aspect and they've grown and scaled a lot more because of the abilities
we have with? Yeah, we've got some really cool stuff. I mean, we've got clients that are 2 people that the software we built for them is their business, right? And so we've gone very small. We've done that where they actually scaled. We've done that with someone that used their software to grow their company and sell, exit it, had a very successful exit. So that was cool for them. And, not our client anymore after that happened, but I'm so happy for them and proud of them. And just the piece that we got to play in that is very cool. And just to see they got a tremendous return on their investment with us. And so that's, and they worked hard. I mean, it wasn't just us, I don't, at all. Right. But they built this business into something that they could successfully exit, but we were a part of it. The software that they had was a part of that.
I love it. And one of the things I think it's really important for people to pay attention to with this, having the right software, the right platforms. And again, coming from a CRM standpoint, to me, it's like the CRM is the lifeblood of your business.
Sure.
But coming from that side, this is something that if you're looking to grow your business, you got to future pace this. Think about these kind of things. What do I need? What am I doing right now? Am I just duct taping a bunch of stuff together? Or can I do it right with one platform that's going to make it easy, because in the future, I'm going to sell it. And you want to either, whether you scale it or you want to sell it or both,
right?
You've got to have that point that, if you're just using an Excel spreadsheet and an old school Rolodex, they ain't going to work very well. It's not very sellable from that standpoint.
Well, I literally had a business broker not long ago tell me that it was not uncommon to have clients that was so poor on technology, either lacking or old technology, that it was literally harming the valuation of their company. And so we've looked at some things to kind of implement some technology on a fairly quick basis to help with them. And it can literally be the difference in the multiple that you get when you're exiting a business, or whether you can exit your business, if it's even attractive to buy.
Nice. I appreciate you sharing that, because that is such a big thing, and people don't think about it.
Yeah.
A lot of times, some of us, like in my world, a lot of times people are the solopreneur, they're the coach. A lot of times I work with a lot of coaches, speakers, things like that. And so they don't necessarily even have a plan to scale and exit the business.
Right.
But knowing that you can't is kind of a whole different answer of whether you want to or not. And that's where, thinking through this stuff. And I'd like you to kind of share a little bit about the journey of what's the discovery process with a client, because I think it might be helpful for anybody listening to understand, how do you figure out what is it you actually need and where you need to go in order to have a intelligent conversation and make sure that you're building out what you really need.
Okay. So we always start with, what are you doing now, and or the pain? It's usually but we need to know, like, what are you doing now? What's working, what's not? So if someone has some software, but it's like, man, this isn't serving me well. Okay. What about it is working, right? You're still using it. So something's working. You haven't completely abandoned it. So what is in there that you need is good? What does it not have that you know that you need? What do you know it could be doing better? Where's the pain? And I'll often start with, when somebody comes to me, when I first meet them, there's a stated problem. It's usually, the real problem is usually some version of that, right? But we start with, what is the stated problem? Tell me more about that. We dig in, what's really going on? What are you doing now? What's working? What's not? And then we really try to get into the vision, because I tell people I really want to focus on not what they have, but what they need. If there are areas that they have that must carry forward because of compliance, regulatory, whatever, it's working great, whatever it is, I want to make sure we capture that in our solution. But I really want to spend the bulk of our time on what's ideal. What do you need? Where do you want to go? What's your vision? How do you want your company to run?
That is great. I love the way you put that out there with, what is it you actually need and what do you want? They're two separate creatures. People don't always, they don't always think of the whole thing, because they're thinking about what they want, and it's no different. I mean, as a marketer, I was like, the whole concept of people think they want a whole bunch of cool stuff and they think that's what they need, but that's not really what they need.
Oh, I did leave off one important piece. If it's kind of a mid-sized organization, if it's very small, this wouldn't apply as much. But if there are levels in an organization, we've got to get beyond the owner and decision maker that we're talking with, right? We got to get down to the people that are, especially if there's existing software, we've got to get down to the people that are using it every day. because almost without fail, we learn that those people are using some sort of workaround or something that the boss man doesn't even realize is happening. And so if we don't get to that level, we're going to miss something really important on how this software needs to actually work. And sometimes what they're doing is necessary. It's fine. But we found a number of cases where the workaround that they've kind of created is not really good for the business. And so we can make sure to kind of meet in the middle and help those daily users to actually do their jobs well, but do it in a way that's also good for the company and meets that owner's vision.
That is so good. And I think it is really important that, and it does apply to the smaller businesses too, because even if you are a smaller business with just, 1 to 5 employees, that many, I think it's really important that we go through. It's like, okay, here's our wish list. This is what we want it to do. Here's the things that it has to do. And then make sure that you have, a huddle with everybody. And it's like, okay, what else do you want? Ask the questions. What do you see that's working? What else would be nice to add? And get those conversations, because you're right. I mean, even I see it all the time, even in a smaller situation where I find out that a client that's come to me, I start working with them, and then I find out that there's a whole bunch of stuff their VA has got going on that the owner didn't even really know.
Didn't even know about, right?
And a lot of times that actually ends up shortcutting our process, and because they weren't involved. And I always tell, like, when I bring a client in on my side, I'm like, okay, when we are working together and you have an assistant of some sort or somebody else that's doing some of the stuff, you need them to come in too. Like, they should be on the calls with us, because I want them involved. I want everybody on the same playing ground. I want everybody working together, because then everybody understands what's happening and everybody can ask their questions and voice their concerns, to make sure we don't go through and spend a ton of time building something out and then find out we missed something really important at the end when it should have been at the very beginning. And
amen,
got to start over.
For sure. And then after all that, after we get the grand vision, we start looking at how much can we pare it down. There's, I don't know if you're familiar with the term MVP, minimum viable product, right?
Yes.
So the M and the V are both super important, right? It's got to be viable. You got to do enough to make it viable. But in the first run, the first release, it should be no more than that. Don't add bells and whistles, right? Let's cut down, pare down, build as little as possible for it to meet the need that it's supposed to meet. Because when it starts getting used, then we'll figure out what's really needed. If I sit down with somebody and get their grand vision and we go off and build that, at least a third of it will never be used. It's a waste. And then there's another third that probably wasn't quite exactly what they needed. So we're really, really big on nailing down that MVP and pulling back what we build in the first release.
I love it. And it's funny that you bring up, minimum viable product, because, that is actually, like, I learned that through the book, The Lean Startup, which I couldn't complete the book. The book was boring as hell. I always tell people, everybody talks about how amazing the book is. Don't bother. Go do a search for minimum viable product. Read that part. What is the point of that, which you just explained it, so they don't even have to really read it. That's the important thing. That's the only part of the whole book I thought was good. The rest of it bored the hell out of me. But it is such a critical thing. And I think with that said, you also look at something that I do with clients, and I think it's really important for people to pay attention to, especially like if you're going to go into a software situation, is you have that big picture plan of what the end goal is going to be, but then you phase it down into small chunks so you can have progress and results along the way. Instead of you're going from A to Z, you go to A to D and course correct if you need to.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes. And I tell people all the time, we don't want to go too far down the wrong path, right? Let's do those frequent check-ins. Let's release, interact with it. How's this going? Oh, okay. And it's not uncommon for me here. Look, this is exactly what I asked for, but it's not operating the way I thought it was going to, right? And so boom, let's fix that. Because if you're on the wrong path, man, figure that out before you get too far down there. Pull it back in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of that, it's kind of funny we're talking about this right now, because this is a conversation that's come up probably, I'm going to say probably even 5 times in the last week, which is it's all about communication. You've got to have that communication on all sides. if you're building something out for them, letting them know this is where we are and this is where the next steps are, but then they have to actually use it and see what's the next, how is it working? Is it working great? Is it not working so great? What do we need to tweak? Make sure that the team is involved, make sure there isn't somebody grumbling in the background, not saying so, because that's always an important one. You got somebody who didn't like it from the beginning and you got to figure out why down the road, and then they won't use it. I've seen that before too. So I think that communication process is such a critical piece, which leads me to a question a little bit off course, but I think that it might be very valuable for people. How do you go about the communication process as you're building that out with clients and making sure that everybody is involved?
Well, we dedicate time to it. We set time aside. And I tell people going in, like a leader of a company, somebody that's engaging us on this, it's like, look, I understand you have a full-time job, right? You got a day job, you got a company to run, but this is a time investment. We'll minimize it as much as we can, but there's a certain level that we have to have from you or this isn't going to work. Even if we're working more with the team, we got to bring that person in. And oftentimes it's to be a tiebreaker, right? They're the decider. We'll end up with members of their team that are giving us conflicting information, and we can't do both. And so we're going to need somebody to dictate how it's going to go. And we'll need to bring them in on that. But we start soliciting feedback, and it's so common to hear, no, that's fine. I'm like, whoa, fine's not fine. What would be ideal? What's not awesome about it, right? Let's dig in, let's pull on that thread, and just kind of, sometimes we have to dig the feedback out of them. But we'll do that. Is just to make sure that they're coming up with I'm not okay with fine. And sometimes it is fine. It's like, no, I don't have a better suggestion. I'm just having to kind of process this and figure it out. And then sometimes they come back later and they go, yeah, no, it is awesome. That I just, as I live with that for a little bit, it's fantastic. I just didn't see it at first.
Got it. And then of course you always have that one person that just has no emotions anyway. So everything in the world is fine. I mean, they you can take them to the best barbecue place in Texas and they're still going to say, oh, it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah. I had a guy in Australia. I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound fine. And he goes, no, I'm fine. I said, dude, you don't look like you're fine. And he goes, this is just my face.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, sorry.
Yep. Sometimes you got some of those, but I do think it's important. And you brought up a really big thing about the fact of check in. Like you've got to, if it doesn't sound like it's an amazing yes, check in and try to figure out, is there something going on that isn't quite right? Because a lot of times people will say, oh, it's fine, when there is something that's grinding on them and they're just not. Sometimes they just don't want to cause a conflict, so they don't say it.
And sometimes they don't know how to articulate what it is they don't love.
Yeah. And that's the one you have to dig harder for. And I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be the next one I was going to say. Is like, sometimes they know that something is off, but they can't figure out how to put that into words yet. And so coaching them through that process and helping them come up with that is great, because two things happen. Number one, you get a better product out of it. But the second thing is then they feel more heard and more comfortable about the whole situation. And to them, you're a rock star because you asked. And by the fact that you pried a bit more, you end up getting to the root of it. And then by the time you do figure it out and correct whatever it was, they're just over the hill.
You've worked through it together, right? Exactly. Absolutely. And I'll tell you another thing on that communication thread, right, is one thing that I believe in, and we've pretty successfully instilled this in this company, is that bad news rarely gets better with age, right? And so we believe in having difficult conversations sooner than later. Our next perfect project and implementation will be the first one. Something's going to go wrong. We're going to talk it through. There's a tendency with software developers to not deliver that bad news because they're hoping they can pull it back off of the edge and it won't go over and the client will never know there was a problem. But that's not very realistic. It does happen some, but so we believe in delivering bad news as soon as possible, working through something. If we know we can't beat a deadline, I'm not going to tell you we can. If something starts to slip, I think a client needs to know that as early as possible so they can deal with it in their business. But yeah, that's something that it's a little unique in custom software with devs, but we believe in delivering bad news as soon as possible and working through it together.
Yeah, as it should be. Honestly, like I said, I've had this conversation about communication with so many people this week, and literally in the last 7 days. It's just amazing how it keeps popping up. And I think it's because a lot of times in today's society, people just aren't communicating as much as they used to. And
Right.
and of course, nobody wants to deliver the bad news and nobody wants to hear the bad news. So then they just ignore it and stick their head in the sand. And it is one of those things. It has to be done. And it's not even necessarily bad news. Even good things and bad things, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Communication is always the key. It's like, talk to them, talk it through, and always look for that solution focus versus the problem focus.
Yes.
That's a big one that I think a lot of people need more of in today's world.
Truth. Absolute truth.
Yeah. All right. So as we're getting close to time here, I got two final questions for you.
Okay.
Second to the last question. This is the Meet Cool People show. So what does Meet Cool People mean to you?
Man, it can be all over the place, Eli. As we talked about a little bit, I'm a whiskey and a barbecue guy, and I can geek out. And so if I meet somebody that's passionate about that, man, let's go, right? We could talk for hours. But really, to me, cool people, it could be so many things. But it kind of always comes down to, are you really into something? What are you passionate about? And by the way, I can find somebody to be very cool, even if their passion is not my passion. Maybe I can learn something from you, right? But it could be personal. It could be in business. Do you care about what you're doing? Are you passionate about it? Are you doing cool things? Are you doing new things? Or are you doing old things in a cool new way? Or do you just really care a lot about something that you're doing, even if it's not new? That's what I find to be cool. And those are the people that I like connecting with.
Beautifully said, my friend. Love it. All right. So how can people get a hold of you?
Ayokasystems.com. Is great. And that may not be as easy to remember. Maybe this one's a little more memorable, but rentmysoftware.com is also up there. That's a landing page for us. You'll get a little info there, and then you can follow that through to the main page and learn more than you ever wanted to know about us.
Awesome. Very cool. Chad, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. We have, like I said at the beginning, we met January 2023. And so it's been over a year. I cannot believe it's been that long.
I know. I remember it was at the Crude. I remember that coffee shop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You, Jessica, and I sat down, and I was still new in town and still just barely like getting out of my house at that point. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Now we see each other, once or twice a month because we are going to the business mixers for Success Champions, which is always fun. And I know you always find the great barbecue places to take us to. So that's always a good thing.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming and hanging out today. It has been a pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed it, man.
Very cool. All right. Everybody listening, get out there, connect with Chad. And if there's anything that I can do to help you out, reach out, let me know. Take care.
And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. If you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to followuprockstar.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to followuprockstar.com and we'll see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rockstar.